Welcome to a very exciting panel discussion we've got coming up this afternoon on the topic of how to retain great staff in strata and property management. And today I'm delighted to be joined by, firstly, Leanne Pilkington. Welcome, Leanne.
Hi.
Leanne is CEO of Lang & Simmons and President of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales. So fantastic having Leanne here with us. And Josh Baldwin. And Josh is the Executive Director of Munro Property Group and Director of the Strata Community Association. So welcome to you, Josh.
Thanks, David.
And I must say, fantastic to have two people who both work in business and across industry associations to share your insights. I just want to frame this conversation. Obviously, the context of retaining great staff is not new in any business, but it's been clearly very different at the moment. And I saw an article in the Fin Review back in April, and it was suggesting that 30% of property managers have left the industry in the last 12 months. Now, that's not just leaving their jobs, that's leaving the industry. And the number I saw, a bit older data, but 25% in the strata industry, with most of those being strata managers themselves. So whilst the need to attract and retain great staff is not new, obviously doing that in an environment where COVID's playing a role is far more significant. And when we take that and we overlay that with the financial context of what's going on, the structural shift and the demands on property managers and property management businesses, strata management businesses, tight margins, vacancy rates high in some areas, low in other areas. It's quite a lot to manage, and therefore the impact on staff is great. So, it's in that context that we're looking at the question of how to attract and retain great staff. So I guess, Leanne, perhaps starting with you and referring back to that article, what are some of the key reasons people are leaving at the moment?
It's been stressful, particularly in the property management space, more stressful than in a lot of others, because you're dealing with tenants that are under pressure, financial pressure. You're dealing with landlords that are under financial pressure. You might be dealing with your own level of financial pressure. And that amount of stress can be really difficult to manage. And I don't think we necessarily provide our property managers with enough skills in dealing with difficult conversations at those stressful times. And
it's far worse, you think, in COVID, the stress?
Massively.
Yeah. Yeah,
massively. And even though COVID, largely the issues of COVID are no longer really with us in the same way, but what we're finding in some areas, particularly in regional Australia, we have got very, very low vacancy rates. So now property managers every weekend are dealing with people that are struggling to actually put a roof over their heads.
Yep.
And so again, they're still dealing with a lot of very stressful situations.
And the data point in that article, are you seeing them actually leaving the industry, not just wanting to change jobs?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly plenty of people moving around.
Yep.
There has been a lot of change, but yes, absolutely, there are people leaving the industry without doubt.
Yeah, okay. And Josh, what about you across the strata industry and your business? What are you seeing? Is it a similar trend to what was in that AFR article?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's been like that for a while now. Strata management is a stressful job. I don't even know where you can begin when you try to explain what a strata manager actually does, And there is certainly a difference between what the client expects and what the strata manager is actually performing. So, for example, things get a little bit tighter in relation to funding and the financial side of the strata, and the strata manager is looked upon to become a consultant in building, a consulting in fire engineering and things like this. And that's a very stressful place to be in, of course. And so that's where we see the 25% of strata managers. I mean, a little bit lower than obviously the property management sphere, but it's a tough gig to do, and especially when you're called upon from 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. So yeah.
And to help deal with that stress, do you think if I'm a business owner, should I be looking at something different to help equip my teams with the skills to deal with this?
I think you need to be having the conversation in the first place. You need to be really clear on where your people are at, because everybody deals with things differently. So firstly, have the conversations and then encourage them to do role plays, encourage better conversations within the teams. What's going well for you? What's going badly? Let's talk that through. So it's really about communication.
Yep. And Josh, similarly, do you think the skills equation can be addressed? Is it a matter of developing, that pipeline of new capabilities?
Well, absolutely. But, as Leanne said before, it's managing expectations, not only client expectations, but as a business owner, what's your expectations of your staff? Yep. Are you expecting them to run the business like you would run the business? Or, are you inviting them into that inner circle as, see my perspective as a business owner? And I think when you get a little bit of that ownership perspective, things become much clearer and things become much easier to understand as to why you're going through what you're going through.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I've had a conversation with a lot of people around, working from home's become more prevalent through lockdown in particular. Is that a way of balancing some of that stress? Obviously, and this is a very open topic, I think. There's no resolution of it. Is it more stress or less stress? Does working from home, is that a circuit breaker? Does that allow some of that to be managed because I can give time back to those people under stress?
Some people love working from home and other people don't. So again, it's about having that conversation, but being prepared to offer that flexibility, because a lot of our property managers are working mums.
Yeah, okay.
So they do need the flexibility to do the school drop-offs and pickups can be really important for them. So again, have the conversation with your people, but be open, because I'm finding not all business owners are open to the idea of continuing that work from home.
Yep.
And I think it all comes down to the way you manage people. Some people like to micromanage their people.
Okay.
Other people like to manage via outcomes. And so if you manage via outcomes, you don't need to know what people are doing every minute of every day.
So do you think that's an industry thing, that is there resistance to welcoming new levels of flexibility?
I'm certainly finding that, particularly sadly with some of our older business owners. I think maybe some of the younger ones are a little bit more flexible, a little bit more open to that thinking. But yeah, certainly I'm seeing some resistance. Yeah,
certainly for me in the tech industry, that flexibility it's a way of keeping staff. People do want more of that.
Yep.
What about you Josh? Is it similar challenge?
As a young person, David, is that what you're referring to?
Of course.
Look, I'm an absolute advocate from working from home. Not only in my business, but from conversations that I've had with other business owners. Leanne, you alluded to it before, especially the older generation who own businesses. It was almost that circuit breaker to change their perception of, if you're home, you're just doing laundry, not doing work. That was proof in the pudding, I guess you could say, of being able to function as a business unit through these COVID lockdowns and in some cases self-quarantines. And so I believe that has created a huge benefit for businesses to be able to, increase their technology footprint. So, look at cloud hosting, look at not being locked into the office, look at portability, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not only, mums that are working from home, but it's dads, right? In the strata management industry, you can be away from 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night and not even see your kids. So being available to be home during those hours and kind of going, well, I have a meeting at 6 o'clock, so I'm going to downtime from 4 o'clock till 5 o'clock and pick back up again. My productivity is still there, and I've created this space where I can actually, hang out with my kids, etc.
So, Josh, is there a counterpoint to that? And I know, yes, I'm older than you. I actually found it hard working from home to establish those boundaries, and probably I would say I found it more stressful. So I'm happy being back in the office, but that's a personal choice. Is that a potential trap to not be able to establish those boundaries?
Yeah, 100%. So what we did in our business is we started monitoring our employees.
Yep.
And that was a very open conversation that we had. It wasn't about monitoring about what you're doing. It was about monitoring to see how long you're working till.
Yep.
And so in the first couple of weeks, we found that people were working till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock at night. And we were just using, Microsoft Teams to see that. And I was just, ping, update, come, hang on a minute. We just have to have a conversation about you working, you overworking essentially.
Yep.
Are you struggling to get your stuff done in your dedicated hours, or are you just, oh no, well there's nothing else to do, And so, okay, right, well we need to have a conversation about that. But you're right, getting back to the office though was, a beautiful thing. We had a big lunch and it was a very, exciting time, and young people young people, we need that social kind of contact. We thrive for that social contact as well. So, you know, all the young people in our office were like, yeah, I want to come back to the office. And, you know, I thought, well, wouldn't you want to stay at home? No, we want to be back. We want to be back. So, you know, it's the balance.
So I'm going to come back to that point in Josh in a minute. So hold that one. Leanne, you mentioned having a conversation with people and being open to change.
Yep.
Does that also apply to that question of how are people coping working from home as well as in the office? Do you think it is a situation that can be managed to
Yeah,
retain
absolutely.
people?
Some people really love working from home and others just don't.
Yep.
So certainly from my personal experience, we're doing a bit of a mixture.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of having those ongoing conversations. So we had it during COVID, we had it after COVID, we have it every 6 or 8 weeks. How are you going? Is it still working for you? Are you still happy with the arrangements that we have in place?
And that's such an important, it's a simple thing, but it's so important because I don't think it is one size fits all.
No.
And Josh, you mentioned the office space there. You know, again, being in the industry, I'm fascinated by what role does the office play in a future workforce, and how does that become an important part of retaining people? Does it still have a role? Is it an important role?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely think it's got an important role. It needs to be a space, and we've I call it Googifying. We've done some pretty cultural changes in the office, right? So we've made it a very open space. We've made sure the fridges are stocked. There's food around, because there are people that have to work from the office who are, desk bound just due to the fact that there's paperwork, there's trust accounts that are being managed, et cetera, there's paper bills that are still coming in to being paid, so they need to be in here. And so we've created a very open space. And we've gone to hot desking, for example. So it's freedom and availability. We've rolled out new technology, new hardware, new laptops. They're all mobile connected, so you can either be in the office or be outside. It's essentially the same.
Okay. And there was another article I read recently from the Real Estate Business article that talked about put culture first. And of course, not new news in industry, in business, that culture is an important part of attracting and retaining great staff. But is culture, does it have a different flavour now? Does it take on a different meaning? Is it more important than it was before, perhaps?
Definitely think it's more important than it used to be. And working with an organisation that shares your values is incredibly important. It's not something that our generation really thought about, right? Yep. But it's a conversation that you need to have, and people they want to be working with an organisation that has a purpose, and they want to have shared values. So that purpose needs to also be important to them. So it's a really interesting point.
Well, and that question of purpose, I know it's a pet topic of mine. I think we work in an industry that influences people, so many aspects of people's days, and as you mentioned in the opening, people at worst moments of their lives, people at the best moments of their lives, and I think, if people can see what a difference they're making, having a good property manager, a good strata manager, having a good relationship can make a difference, massively to people day to day. And I think making that purpose real is a big part of creating those great cultures.
Yeah, absolutely.
Josh, culture in the strata industry, what tags would you put around? How important is that?
Culture is absolutely imperative. And in a stressful environment, I think we found that through COVID, and that's another thing that we can pull out of where we've been and history of where we've been, is culture's just become more and more important. Like, we took it for granted hanging out with each other in the office and, grabbing a coffee. But now those moments are so much more, special, essentially. It opens up conversations as well. I go back to kind of what you said, Leanne, about wearing the burdens of other people's stresses in the property industry. And you've got low tenancy rates, for example, low occupancy. We've got things like the ACP pandemic, I guess you could call it, in itself, where strata managers are being called upon to have meetings where people are stressed about having to raise $2 million worth of funding and things like that. And strata managers care. That's the reason why they're in the job. They care for people, they care for their homes, and sometimes they wear the burden of that upon themselves. But having good culture in the office allows people like myself to have conversations with those managers. Hey, how are you going with that? Oh, it's very stressful. I've been in a room last night with a meeting with every owner with tears in their eyes, saying I'm not going to be able to afford to put dinner on my plate, let alone take this ACP off the wall. And the strata manager bears that. And next minute, they're not only managing, they're trying to be a counsellor, they're trying to be a financial counsellor, they're trying to So culture in the office, being able to come together and actually share your feelings, is so important. You couldn't do that at home.
Yeah. No, and I think that connection in times of support is just so critical when the times are tough. And sort of moving on the topic from your retaining staff, obviously that's a key thing, but attracting staff, and especially if we're at a phase where there is a net loss of talent, I'm really interested to know what do you see are the key ingredients to attract people to the industry, and do we need to be thinking differently about where we're going to attract people from?
I definitely think we need to be thinking differently, and there is a bit of a, it's sort of the same property managers, right, moving around the pool of real estate businesses. And that's not ideal for anybody. So if you're wanting to attract people, people are attracted, as we've already said, shared purpose and shared values are really important. So you need to know what your purpose and your values are. Not every business is clear on that. And you need to offer flexibility. That is very attractive for people today. I've just recruited somebody into my team for the very reason that she was never allowed to do school pick up and drop off. She doesn't want to do it every day. She just wants to do it from time to time. And I'm like, tell me. You tell me what you want and I can build the job to suit. But I also think that we need to really understand that property management and strata management, it's a customer service role. And so, yes, you can teach the skills, you can teach the rules, you can teach the legislation, but if we can maybe attract people out of the hospitality industry, out of the travel industry, where they're losing jobs, I think that there's a great opportunity for us to really take the service that we're providing our clients up to the next level by attracting different people.
It's a great point, and Josh, I'm sure you'd probably agree. It's a similar scenario at Strata, that it's customer service orientated and looking wider to attract people with the right attitude, trained from the skills. Do you think likewise, Josh, if you get people with the right attitude, can you train them with the disciplines and the competency required to be a good strata manager?
Look, 100%, David. And, I'm yet to hear someone say when they're leaving school, I really want to be a strata manager. You just don't hear those words coming out of people's mouths. And so it's about life experience, and it's about understanding it's tough to teach a strata manager what to do apart from kind of the straight up, this is what the legislation says we have to do, because it's so much more. All right, and it's by practice and by customer service and by negotiations and we've got people in the banking industry who make the jump into strata management because they want the flexibility, for example, and they are great because they're on the front, out the front of banks, they're tellers, they're personal finance people as well, same hospitality as well. So it's now about pushing down the professionalism of these industries, becoming like going saying accountancies or lawyers, or we've got a lawyer in our office who's a strata manager, sick of dealing with the law and would rather deal with people, right? Rather than precedent. So it's looking in those industries now and saying, hey, this could be for you.
And Leanne, you mentioned that flexibility being an appealing point. So if I'm hearing you both correctly, if I'm a potential person coming from a customer service industry and I'm looking to join one of your businesses, or comparing two businesses, the one that can offer me a sense of connection to purpose and culture, a bit more flexibility, this training to become competent at my job, that's the place where this talent's going to go.
Yep, absolutely. And a business owner that genuinely cares and understands what's important to you.
Yeah.
So business owners really need to, and so many of them are busy, right? They're active real estate agents or strata managers themselves, but they've got to make the time to communicate with their people and genuinely understand what makes them tick.
Okay, yep. Josh, any thoughts on that?
Look, 100%. Real estate is a fast-paced industry. No one argues with that. And a lot of real estate firms who, do the full gambit like we do, I expect my sales agents to be out there all the time making phone calls and stuff like that. But, property management is a completely different kettle of fish. It is all about the people. It is all about, nurturing assets and things like that. So it is a change. I would love to say that we were going to have an absolute peak in strata management and property management, because I think we will. There are industries, as Leanne said, hospitality, where people go, I'm locked into these shift hours, I'm locked into where we need to, be of service. But there is an ability in this industry to really make a name for yourself, essentially, as being the best property manager in this whatever area that you're working in.
And you've both sort of said, okay, if we're going to attract people with the right skills and right attitude in property management, strata management, but if you lift it up to an industry level, and what do we as an industry need to be doing to help support that? Is some of the training and retraining actually at the owner level for people who haven't had to deal with this crisis, have been successfully running businesses for a long time in some cases? And do we need to be doing more to sort of really get the message out there that we need to think more broadly about what a property manager or a strata manager of the future looks like and where we're going to get them from?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting. I've been in the real estate industry for 40 years now, so it was all mum and dad corner stores, if you like, back in the day. Now there are bigger businesses that are dealing with a much bigger teams, bigger territories or footprints. And they're bringing different management skills and different management styles. And I think that a lot of us can learn from that. I think that we all do need to re-skill and learn to be, one of the things with real estate is that it's often the really good salesperson or really good property manager that goes, you know what, I want to do this for myself. Yeah, right. So they don't have the business ownership skills. They've got the technical skills, industry skills. They don't have the business ownership and the people management skills. And I think that as an industry and as business owners, we need to understand that, and we need to upskill ourselves to do a better job for our people. Yep.
And Josh, as the youngest man on the panel, the role of technology helping us, helping get there too. What role does tech play in helping support this new wave of people coming in and getting them up to speed?
Yeah, look, absolutely, David. And I take off my business owner hat and put on my association hat and say, look, we look to the associations, SCA, REI, to help the business owners who don't, have capacity of training teams and et cetera, look to those institutions to help and support in training. We go back to culture. Why aren't you training as a team in your boardrooms, online, with REI, SCA, et cetera. So, tech is performing, you can do that from home as well, so don't get me wrong. So tech is almost like that untapped industry of, well, we don't have to be in a room to learn, so do it at your own pace. We're talking about flexible working, so you could do that from home, et cetera. So,
Yeah, and I know when I speak to our client base, our advisory board, a lot of feedback I get is, make it easy for us to onboard people, because we want to do it quickly. We want it to be a good experience for them. We want technology to help make their day better, because when they're dealing with all these stresses and difficult situations, the easier we can make it for them to do a job, the more it's going to take away some of that pain. So I think, certainly my view, obviously as a tech provider, I think we've got a key role to play as well, helping support getting people into the industry, helping them enjoy it, making them productive, making them efficient.
And being able to use the technology to its, you would find it all the time, right? People just can use that much of the technology, but if they spent some time training and onboarding properly, they could use that much of the technology and everything would be that much easier.
Yeah, you're dead right. That's a great point, Leanne. I think getting things embedded as new processes too, it is difficult. We are going through what is effectively a massive industry-wide change management process at scale, and I think all that training and that link it to purpose, link it to training is so important.
Absolutely.
I'm very conscious of time. Loved hearing both your feedback. You've both got such a broad view, but I do want to, as we've got probably a lot of business owners, property managers, strata managers in the session today, 1 to 2 key takeaways you would say for each of those. Josh, starting with you.
Yeah, sure. Look, if there's one thing that I want you to all get out of today is have a conversation. Right? Now is the time. Business owners, have conversations with your employees. See how they're doing. Employees, if you're not doing well, have a conversation with your boss, with your principal, and create that space where that is open and available at any time. Whether it's an open door policy, whether it's in community, whether it's in groups, etc., whether it's 360 reviews, etc. You would rather have the conversation now when you're level-headed, versus when you're up here and you're stressed out and you're making snap decisions because your brain's telling you one thing, your heart's telling you another thing. So if there's one thing to take away is have a conversation. And business owners, trust your employees. If you don't trust them, why did you employ them? Right. So working from home, you just got to trust that they're doing the right thing. You don't have to micromanage, look over their shoulder. Otherwise, I'll be questioning your initial hire there.
Great point. Trust. Yep. Great point. And Leanne?
Yeah, very true. I absolutely agree about having a conversation and having a proactive conversation. So when you're in a mental space where you can respond rather than react.
Yeah.
Because that's quite often things get to a pressure point and nobody handles the conversation well. So be proactive with your conversations, have them regularly. Don't think that just because you feel one way about something, that everybody feels the same way as you. It's really important to understand the personality types of the people that you're working with. Yeah. And if you don't know what they are, do some training on that. Do a DISC, or there's lots of different profiles that you can do. And also, I found throughout COVID, everybody was so focused on everything that they couldn't do. So turn it around and focus on what you can do, rather than always focusing on what's wrong. Focus on what's right and how you can move forward.
It's a great point. You've both made some great points there. I hope people can listen on them, act on them. They're simple things. You know, have a conversation. Starts with that. Be open to challenge. You know, look at training. Those sorts of things. And as you were speaking, then Leanne, just sort of a quote that I forget whose quote it is, so I'm not going to attribute it. But yeah, the old saying, never waste a good crisis.
Yes.
Yeah, this is an opportunity to do things differently. Was it Churchill?
I think so,
Thank you. And so I've learned something for today, more than just one thing for today. But I think it is an opportunity to do things differently, to do it better, to create a more compelling industry for people for great people to join and hopefully stay. And make a difference to the way people live, work and play. And I think that's a great purpose.